You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and that charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag
For what?
with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club,
Why?
buy some bottles, impress them girls.
what?
It's more than life.
Oh, fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast and Who Dat. And I'm Ethan. And man, it feels to get another win. And I think it feels good to have secured another win because it came against the LA Rams. Because man, the Saints hadn't been able to get another a win against the LA Rams since the 2018 season when they beat the Rams in the regular season, and then of course they've lost two in a row against the Rams in the playoffs and the no call, and then the start of the season in the 2019 season when they had the early whistle when it was the should have been a fumble return by Cam Jordan, and the refs called it dead before it was actually down, and that should have been a touchdown. And then that was also the game when Drew Brees hurt his thumb, and that just kind of threw off that whole season, even though the Saints did make the playoffs. But it just felt good to get I don't know if you really say it would be really revenge, but it just felt good to get a win against the LA Rams, and really just I don't know if it was really a beat down, but just with and some of the opponents that were just left on the Saints schedule, whether the Saints do anything from here on out, it felt good to beat them at least, and they were probably. The teams left on their schedule, they're probably reeling just as much as the Saints were. So it just felt good to get a win against the Rams. So let's get into this game and let's kind of break it down. So can I get a menu? And just like all these games, like I always say, they always all kind of start out the same. They always are just kind of 3 and out. Punt fest. They're punt. If you like festivals, it depends on what kind of festivals you like. Because this was a 3 and out punt fest to start out, and that's exactly how it started out. The Rams, the Saints won the toss, and they deferred, and right out of the gate, the Saints forced a 3 and out. Punted it back to the Saints. Rams got forced the 3 and out on the Saints. Punted it back to the Rams. Rams got one first down. Forced then got a 3 and out. Forced to stop after that, and then the Saints finally got a little something going, and got the biggest play on that drive was a beautiful like crossing route, like a 27-yard crossing route by Juwan Johnson, and that was just a beautiful throw and catch that really jump started that drive. And then once they kind of got down in the red zone, this has just been kind of the story all season since Andy Dalton's been the quarterback. And he takes a sack, and that like backs him up into like 3rd and long. And it was just kind of weird that Taysom Hill came onto the field when it was like 3rd and long. I think it was like 3rd and 14 or 3rd and 18, and uh, I don't know what they expected for Taysom Hill to come on and try to pick that up. But then he comes on the field. I didn't know if they thought he was going to run for a 3rd and long or if he was going to throw for a 3rd and long. And then he comes on the field and then he takes a sack. And then it was like 4th and 24, which that backed it up and made it an even longer field goal. So then they end up having to kick a 46-yard field goal. And Will Lutz, he struggled early on in the season, and he been possible that he could maybe miss a field goal like that early on in the season. But it seems like he's settled down and kind of gotten in a groove, and he banged that thing right down the middle, and it really kind of seemed like that kind of settled things down. And the defense had looked really good to start the game out, and you'd even saw like on one of the first drives where they made the Rams have to punt. Chris Harris Jr. made a big tackle on 3rd down, so that's why I'm mentioning him here. So on the first play of the next Rams drive, Tutu Atwell burns him for like a 60-yard touchdown. They got him manned up one-on-one on Tutu Atwell, who's like the fastest player on the Rams offense, and just burns him for a 60-yard touchdown. No safety help or nothing. Chris Harris Jr. is like 33, 34 years old. They got him matched up one-on-one, no safety help, nothing. So it was just a complete defensive breakdown where you got your 34-year-old veteran who should just be playing in the slot, somehow ends up out wide with Tutu Atwell, who I think was drafted maybe in the 2nd or the 1st round and ran like a 4.2 40 and gets burned for a 60-yard touchdown. And so that, before you know it, just like that, Saints go from having a 3-point lead to trailing 7-3. So then they trade punts. Saints punt, get it back, punt. The Rams get it back, punt. And then the Saints end up marching it down the field on a 7-play drive and end up actually capping that off for Andy Dalton with really nice. I think this came on. This was a second. Yeah, this was a 8-yard touchdown pass to this was actually on 3rd and 7 at the Rams 8, because we talked about Andy Dalton's struggles in the red zone and then goal to go situations, and he threw an 8-yard touchdown strike to Juwan Johnson, who's been so good in the red zone and scoring touchdowns. And this was actually his 5th touchdown. And we'll have to look at his stats later on. But he's been really good this season as the Saints tight end. And a lot of people were expecting Adam Troutman to really step up, which he's been good. And he's actually been dealing with some injuries early on in the season, and he's back now. But Juwan Johnson has actually been really good this season, because that was his 5th touchdown. And then on the next drive, this was really where it looked like the LA Rams were gonna go down and score again, because then they just started running it like on every single play. Like they didn't throw, like I think they maybe threw it on like one play on this drive. This was like a 10-play drive, and they only threw it like one time. And then it was like on a 4th and 2, Peyton Turner made the stop to stop them on 4th and 2 at the Saints 34-yard line. And of course, Peyton Turner, who's finally been healthy and finally been playing well, makes a great play. And of course, he gets rolled up on by a, LA Rams offensive lineman, and it ends up hurting his ankle, and then gets carted away. And then I think I don't know if it was the same LA Rams offensive tackle that rolled up on him, but it was the left tackle who was also a backup for the LA Rams. So it was the backup left tackle of the Rams. He ends up going out of the game as well. So they end up having their third string left tackle in after that as well. So I guess it was a trade for a trade, but then the Saints end up without Marcus Davenport, Cam Jordan, and Peyton Turner. So they're down their three starting defensive ends, and Peyton Turner's just now turning it on, makes a great play, and then he's out for the rest of the game. And heard in a press conference on Monday that Dennis Allen said that Peyton Turner's injury looks like it's not that serious. It's day-to-day, week-to-week kind of thing. So that means he probably got gangrene or staph infection or something like that. So he's probably dead. He's probably deceased. He's probably dead. So he probably got the Black Plague from it. He probably caught that in the locker room right after them taking him back in the cart. So he probably got smallpox or something. So he's probably dead. You'll probably never see Peyton Turner ever again. So just that, let that be known. So that was just awful. Like, talk about horrible luck. So then the Saints get the ball back after making that great play on fourth down, and then what do? They go 3 and out. They do absolutely nothing with it, and then the score is still 7-10, and it's noticeable after Peyton Turner goes out that they have like absolutely no pass rush at all, like zero. That's what the entire time I'm watching that next Rams drive is that they have absolutely zero pass rush, and Matthew Stafford is just dinking and dunking to the sidelines, and he's just standing in there and getting anything he wants. And they go on a 11-play drive and just march down the field and cap it off with a touchdown. And it was a touchdown to Allen Robinson for a 6-yard touchdown. And it was just like taking candy from a baby. And they go into halftime. The Saints I think there was like, I can't remember how much time left. I think there was like maybe like 20 seconds, 21 seconds, or 20, 21 seconds left. And the Saints had maybe like all their timeouts left or something like that. And they just kneel it down. They don't even try for a play or anything. So that was very conservative for the Saints just to kneel it down with that amount of time left. So they go into halftime 14-10. And then the Saints, they actually come out hot in the first half, in the second half, and that they go on a great drive, marching down the field. Start off with like a deep shot to Chris Olave for like 18 yards, and which really jump started that drive, and a couple a big run also from Alvin Kamara for 15 yards, and end up capping that drive off with a 17-yard touchdown by Jarvis Landry, and they end up taking back the lead 14-17, and that was a crazy stat. I heard that's like the first touchdown by an LSU player since like 2012, when Devery Henderson, I guess, had a touchdown reception when Devery Henderson was still here. That's insane. That's crazy. I guess the closest time an LSU player came to scoring a touchdown was, I guess, when Quan Alexander had a fumble return and got tripped up just short of the end zone. So that's a pretty nuts, uh, amazing stat. But I guess it's not that far fetched, seeing how there really aren't that many LSU hasn't really been that many LSU players, offensive players on this team really. So that's pretty exciting if you're an LSU fan. And then the Saints, they ended up the Saints defense ended up forcing a 3-and-out on that, and I think that's when the Saints laid a big hit on Matthew Stafford, like in the back of the end zone, like kind of accordioning him in the back of the end zone when they kind of had him backed up, and they knocked Matthew Stafford around a couple times, and knocked him on his head. They hit him a couple times, and he was getting evaluated on the sidelines, and so they forced a 3-and-out after that. And then this is the biggest, probably the biggest play of the drive. Started out with just a couple plays here. It was just a 7-yard run by Taysom Hill, 8-yard pass by Andy Dalton, and then I guess let's see, then Andy Dalton, and then he got sacked, lost like 13 yards, and then he completed a 13-yard pass to Juwan Johnson. And then on this play, when Andy Dalton got hit on this play and got knocked down, and when I first seen it happen, I thought it was going to be an interception by the way he got hit and the way he got released. I thought there was no way that this was going to be a touchdown. But the way he got hit and he was flailing when he threw it up, I thought for sure it was going to get intercepted. Like, I thought no way that this was going to be a touchdown. And this was on 3rd and 10. And anytime it ends up being anything longer than 3rd and 7, and it's Andy Dalton, I think there's no way it's going to be that they're going to be able to convert it. Same thing when they're down in the red zone. If it's anything longer than like 3rd and 4 or like anything like that, I don't think there's any way they're going to convert it into a touchdown or anything. But somehow Andy Dalton got it out there, and Chris Olave was able to go get it for a 53-yard touchdown. And that was just one of the best plays of the season. And he did it over Jalen Ramsey. Like, he smoked him. Like, he wasn't even, he just ran right by him. Same thing on the Juwan Johnson touchdown. Like, he was crying about pass interference, offensive pass interference on that, but no, he just pushed up on him and did a spin move, twirled around and caught that on him. Like, Jalen Ramsey, he's a great player, but there's just some great players on the Saints today that just made better plays. And then see, I remember what quarterback came in. Bryce Perkins came in for Matthew Stafford, and I was actually worried about that when he came in. Like, I was concerned about when he came in because I was concerned about his running ability. Like, I would have actually rather concussed Matthew Stafford stayed in the game over Bryce Perkins, because that's exactly what happened. Bryce Perkins comes in the game, and first thing that happens Bryce Perkins comes in the game, and the first thing he does, he rushes for 23 yards. Like that's exactly was my fear when Bryce Perkins came in the game, and I'm saying I'd rather concuss Matthew Stafford stay in the game over Bryce Perkins, and of course that's not what happens, because that was my biggest fear, that the scrambling quarterback comes in. But overall, they were able to contain him, and he really didn't do anything for the most of the game. But they were able to get a couple more field goals, and the Saints kind of just traded field goals back and forth after that, and that's pretty much the end of the story. But I thought the Saints were in trouble when Bryce Perkins came in and got that 23-yard field goal, but or that 23-yard run. But the Saints were settled down after that and were able to contain him, and they actually then started sacking him. They got a couple sacks on him and got him in long situations, and the offensive line for him held had to hold a couple times, backing him up and forced him into situations where he had to hold or had to throw. And yeah, the Saints were able to hold on 27-20, and of course the Rams kicked that garbage time field goal to make it 27-20. But let's look at some of these stats here. Because there's some nice ones here. Been a while since there's been some nice stats for the Saints. So Andy Dalton, his stats look great for the most part. Probably one of his best games since he's been a Saint. So he was 21 for 25 for 260 yards, 10.4 yard average. 3 touchdowns, 84.8 QBR, 149.6 quarterback rating. But it's these 3 sacks that drove me crazy. All 3 of those sacks, he could have thrown the ball away. Like early on the field goal drive, he could have thrown that away instead of throwing that sack. Expect also on that trick play that was completely unnecessary when it looked like they had all the momentum and were marching down the field, and there was absolutely no reason to run that trick play, and actually Alvin Kamara was wide open and he could have thrown it to him, and then they run this trick play, and even when running the trick play he could have thrown it away, but instead he just takes a sack. Like, throw it away. He knows that he can throw it away. I guess unlike Jameis Winston, I guess it's better than flailing around and throwing an interception or something worse, or fumbling. But he knows he can throw it away. That's maddening. But then even Taysom Hill, they allowed Taysom Hill to even try to throw it 3 times, and he had one completion on 3 attempts for 14 yards, 4.7 yard average. He took that same kind of sack on that first field goal drive, and of course his QBR and quarterback rating aren't going to be great. A 26.9 QBR, 49.3 quarterback rating, and then the rushing, not a huge totals, but still better than the Pittsburgh Steelers game. Taysom Hill had 9 carries for 52 yards, 6.8 average, no touchdown, a 12 long. Alvin Kamara had 12 carries for 42 yards, a 3.5 yard average, no touchdowns, 11 long. And then Chris Olave had a great day, and this is all kind of talking up, like, that he needs to keep this pace up if he wants to get that offensive rookie of the year award. He has to keep pace with like Damian Pierce and Kenneth Walker III. Those guys are hot on his tail, or he's hot on his tail, whichever way you want to look at it. He needed this big day to stay in that race. This arguably was his best game as a Saint. He had 5 catches for 102 yards, a 20.4 average for a touchdown, that 53-yard long. That was just beautiful over one of the best corners in the league, Jalen Ramsey, on 6 targets. And I was just being hard on him. I was being hard on him. I was being hard on him after the Steelers game. I was really, those last 2 times I was talking about him, I was just really harping on that Arthur Millette pass deflection, and I kept saying I was saying it was a drop. I was calling it a drop. I was saying he's kind of frail. He's been dropping passes. He's been getting lit up, But hey, he came back, and he really proved himself in this game. And then Juwan Johnson, he's really proven himself as a #1 tight end. That's for sure. He's looking good, man. Juwan Johnson is definitely he's making a case for being a clear-cut #1 tight end, because he keeps just showing that he scores touchdowns, if nothing else. He had 3 catches for 47 yards, 15.7-yard average, 1 touchdown, 26-yard long, that 26-yard long, that over route, which really jump-started their first scoring drive on that field goal drive, and that came off of 4 targets. And then Alvin Kamara had 4 catches for 47 yards, 11.8-yard average, 0 touchdown, a 15-yard long on 5 targets. He probably should have had that probably should have been a 50, 60-yard touchdown on that will route trick play, but obviously Andy Dalton didn't see him, or he double clutched and didn't throw it to him for some odd reason. And then Jarvis Landry had 3 catches for 33 yards, 11-yard average, and his first touchdown of the year, and as a Saint, and first touchdown for an LSU player for a Saint in like 10 years, for a 18-yard long on 4 targets. And man, and got to shout out Caden Ellis and this goes for the Saints defense. Shout out for Caden Ellis, man, having another big game. Man, had 11 tackles, 6 solo, 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, a pass deflection, 2 quarterback hits. He was out there balling now, man. Like Caden Ellis, he's like kind of in that mold of like those outside linebackers, kind of like a TJ Watt, and that's kind of like what Holy Kikaha and like TJ Watt and those guys are like that. That's what like Zach Bond did when he was coming out of college. So I don't know why they can't try to do that with Zach Bond. I'd like to see them let like Zach Bond try to play like that outside linebacker, pass rusher, stand up, pass rushing, outside linebacker, like the 3-4 outside linebacking role as well. Like why can't he do some of the similar type stuff? Because it shows that Caden Ellis can do it. So I mean, you drafted Zach Bond so high, and Holy Kikaha could do it, but his knees just couldn't hold up. So it would be nice to see if Zach Bond could do it, they played him at his natural position of what he played, of what he did in college, instead of trying to make him be a natural linebacker, like a middle linebacker, like what Demario Davis is or Pete Werner is. But yeah, Demario Davis had a good game too. He had 8 total tackles, 3 solo, half a sack, 1 quarterback hit, which they said and during the game they said it was a full sack, which would have took him to 7 sacks. But it looks like they only gave him half a sack here on the stat sheet, which would have only taken him to 6.5. Then Carl Granderson, he had a big game, big day as well. He had 7 total tackles, 3 solo, 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits. Tyrann Mathieu had 6 total tackles, 4 solo, 1 pass deflection. And let's see. Paulson Debo had 5 total tackles, all 5 solo, a tackle for loss. Let's see. Let's look at some of these. Who had all the sacks here? And it looks like Tano Passanio also shared a sack with somebody. He had a tackle and a half a sack as well. And then Rashid Shaheed was really good return with his returns. He had 4 returns for a total of 40 yards on a 10-yard average with a long of 17 yards. And he had 1 even called back for a holding penalty, which it would have been a pretty big return, which would have took him all the way to like the Rams 39-yard line, but it ended up getting called back, and took the Saints back to like their own, like, if I remember right, took them back to like their own like 20, 25 or something. But it was a big return. It was gonna take them to the Rams 39-yard line. It was gonna be a big return. It wouldn't have been for the holding penalty. And then Will Lutz was perfect on the day, 22 for 2, long of 47, and perfect on all of his extra points, 3 for 3. And then Blake Gilligan was really good as well. He was punted 5 times for 239 yards, average of 47.8, and 2 inside the 20, and a long of 55. One of them was down at the 2-yard line. So he was really good today. Like he's had 2 really good games. He was good in the Steelers game, even though the Saints lost. He had 1 down inside the 2 in the Steelers game. So Blake Gilligan, another player, the special teams was bad early on in the season, but it's gotten better as the season's gone on. So let's kind of look at the Rams, what they kind of did. They didn't do so hot in comparison to the Saints. There is an interesting stat though here that may stick out to some people once I go over it though. So Matthew Stafford, before he went out with a concussion, he was not terrible actually. He was actually decent. He was 11 for 18 for 159 yards, 8.8 average, 2 touchdowns. He was only sacked once, but he got knocked around a couple of times, which ended up leading him to go out with a concussion. It was that one where he got knocked down in the back of the end zone and fell down on the back of his head that I think re-injured him and made him have concussion syndromes again. So he had a 76.9 QBR, 126.8 quarterback rating. So he was having a pretty good day before he went out. And then Bryce Perkins came in. He was 5 for 10, 64 yards, a 6.4 average. And then this is where the Saints started racking up their sacks. They had 3 sacks for 25 yards on him. He had a 35 QBR, 70.4 quarterback rating. And this is a wild stat that I saw during the game on them. The Saints have actually led the league in sacks since week 3. I just couldn't believe that. That is wild to me. Seeing how the Saints defense seems to have been so bad, and their secondary has seemed to have played so bad, and their record just hasn't translated. It does not illuminate that their defense is good or that their team is good. I think it shows that they have like 31 sacks since week 3. That just seems so hard to believe that they lead the league in sacks since week 3. I don't know. That just doesn't seem right. That doesn't feel right. That's a wild stat. And then this is the one that is a little surprising, seeing how a lot of times if a team leads in this, a lot of times they end up winning. So I'll read this off here. So Cam Akers had 14 carries for 61 yards for a 4.4 average, no touchdowns, along with 13. Bryce Perkins had 5 carries for 39 yards for 7.8 average, no touchdowns, a 23-yard long. Kyrene Williams had 7 carries for 36-yard long with a 5.1 yard average with a 17-yard long. Darrell Henderson had a 2-yard carry for 9 yards with a 4.5 yard average with a 5-yard long, and Matthew Stafford had 1 carry for 4 yards with a 4-yard average with a 4-yard long. So the Rams rushed for 148 yards on the New Orleans Saints. Like, that is pretty wild. So that's something to really take into consideration. So the Saints defense really, it seems like they played good, or just maybe through your rose-colored glasses, it maybe seems like they kind of played good. But really, did they? Because they still allowed 148 yards rushing to a bad Rams team. Yeah, and maybe they kind of got lucky that Matthew Stafford went out with a concussion, because who knows what would have happened if Matthew Stafford would have stayed in the game. So that's a pretty interesting stat right there, that they rushed for 148 yards on the Saints. But I guess the big one there is that they had all those rushing yards, but they didn't have any rushing touchdowns. So that's a really interesting stat there. Because a lot of times when a team rushes for that many yards, they end up winning. And then on to the passing yards. So Tutu Atwell, he had the big touchdown on Chris Harris Jr., but it was just the 1 touchdown, 1 catch for 62 yards and a touchdown. But that's all he had, was that 1 target, that one catch. He's kind of like their Rashid Shaheed. He's kind of a one and done type player. And then Allen Robinson had 4 catches for 47 yards, 1 touchdown off of 5 targets. Tyler Higbee, 4 catches, 45 yards. 0 touchdowns off of 8 targets. Van Jefferson, 3 catches, 41 yards, 0 touchdowns off of 5 targets. Brandon Powell, two catches for 16 yards off of 2 targets. And let's look at their defense here. Bobby Wagner had 11 total tackles, 4 solo. With 4 solo and 0 sacks, 0 tackles for loss, no pass deflections, no quarterback hits. Jalen Ramsey had 6 tackles for loss, or total tackles, 4 solo. So you're trying to see here. Just looking for their big name players. Aaron Donald had 4 total tackles, 2 solo, 2 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hit, but no sacks. Greg Gaines had 2 total tackles, 2 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits. Let's see where their sacker is. And then it's Leonard Floyd was the other guy. Yeah, other player. And then Leonard Floyd had 5 tackles, 3 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. So those were their main players that contributed on defense. Not who you'd really expect. They contained Aaron Donald for the most part. The biggest play he made was, I guess he had a couple tackles for loss, but other than that, he didn't contribute much. He didn't get any sacks, didn't force a fumble or do a lot, considering the Saints offensive line was so beat up. And Brandon Powell, he had a big punt return. I guess that was a kick return for 34 yards. I tried to fake it back, like he was faking it back. They tried a couple of trick plays on punt returns and kick returns, which they kind of worked. Had 1 kick return for 34 yards. They acted like they were going to fake it back, and that worked for 34 yards. And Matt Gay was 2 for 2 on field goal, the 158-yarder towards the end of the game with like 11 seconds left to draw them within 7 points for the onside kick attempt that was failed and recovered by Jarvis Landry to seal the game. And then Riley Dixon had 6 punts, 1 inside the 20, and that's pretty much it for the stats. And then just want to look at Juwan Johnson stats. On to hot takes here. So for my hot takes, I was predicting that for my hot takes for this game, I was predicting that because of the Saints' offensive line being so beat up and having 3 different offensive linemen, backup offensive linemen in the game, and that was a weird thing about this game, I guess, because the Saints have so many backups and so many reserve players. Even though Andres Pete dressed for this game, he still didn't start. I guess he was still hurt, but the Saints didn't have enough players to play. That he was, even though he's still hurt, he still dressed but stood on the sideline. The Saints were still playing backup players, so they were still missing Eric McCoy, Andreas Pete, and James Hurst. So I was predicting that Aaron Donald was going to wreck this game, but he didn't. They kept him from wrecking this game. So I predicted he would have 2 sacks, but he didn't. And then the other thing I was predicting that Juwan Johnson would have a garbage time touchdown, but he didn't. It didn't end up being in garbage time. It ended up being a crucial touchdown. He had, I guess it was the first touchdown of the game. So it came in. I don't know if you'd say it was in crunch time. It wasn't in garbage time. It wasn't in crunch time, but it was to start the game. It was the first touchdown of the game. So I predicted he would have a touchdown. I put kind of stipulations on it, but it was a hot take that he would have a touchdown. So I don't think I've called a hot take right in a while. So I think I'm going to take credit for it. I said he was going to have a touchdown, so I'm taking credit for that. So Juwan Johnson was going to have a touchdown, so I'm taking credit for it. And I'm going to read off his stats so far. He has had some really good numbers this far. So we're 11 games in, and Juwan Johnson, he has 31 catches for 349 yards for 11.3 yard average for a 41-yard long, which I think that came against I think who that came against. That came against the Ravens on a touchdown. That was the one where Marcus Peters was on the sidelines, like looking at him, and has 5 touchdowns already. Had his 5th touchdown. Had my 5th hot take touchdown in this game. So yeah, he's doing good. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what he finishes the year with. Seeing how they have six more games left, it would be really nice to see if he could get to like 600 yards or something this season. 600 yards, 8 touchdowns. Those would be amazing numbers if he could get to something like that. So one of my hot takes hit. Finally, I got a hot take that hit. So I feel good about that. And then my score prediction. My score prediction was kind of close, almost. It was almost half right. It was almost a half right flip because I did pick the Rams to win this, but I picked it to be 27-17. And if it wasn't for a garbage time field goal, it would have been 27-17 Saints. But of course, the Rams had to kick a garbage time field goal, making it 27-20 Saints instead. So that messed it up. So it didn't end up just being a flipped version of that. So I can't take half credit for that. But still, nonetheless, it feels good. It feels good getting one of the hot takes right. But do I feel kind of an overlook of this game? Do I really feel that this is going to be a jump start going into the next 2 games against the 49ers and the Buccaneers next after that? I find it hard to believe that I'm going to take that much confidence from this game because what do I think that the 49ers are going to do if the Rams can run for almost 150 yards against us? Probably won't be pretty. And I don't know, because the Rams are really struggling, and a lot of people think the 49ers are a great team, and then a lot of people think the Buccaneers are on a playoff push. So I don't want to get lulled to sleep into thinking that the Saints are gonna go on a winning streak when they've only won one game, uh, haven't even won 2 games in a row at any time this season. So uh, I definitely don't want to talk playoffs yet. And on top of that, it just seems like anytime the Saints need a team to win a game for us, they just can't do it. What's with this always close but no cigar type thing? Like the Bears not being able to beat the Falcons on Sunday for us. They went up 17-0 on the Falcons and then somehow managed to lose 27-24. Justin Fields threw an interception to end the game essentially. So I don't think the Saints are gonna go on a win streak or get the breaks that they need. So I'm not gonna get my hopes up, but still it felt good to get this win, and it's just enjoyable to see them play well because if nothing else, I'm just a football fan and I'm a fan of the Saints, and it's just nice to see some good Saints football. So with that, I think that's all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?